So, as was mentioned, my name is Áslaug Karen Jóhannsdóttir. I'm a specialist at the Ministry for Foreign Affairs here in Iceland in the Communications and Public Diplomacy Department. And I also serve as a vice chairperson in the government's working group for the SDGs here in Iceland, which is led by the Prime Minister's Office, but in close cooperation with the Ministry for Foreign Affairs. So I was going to split my presentation in two parts. First, I want to talk a little bit about the government's working group for the SDGs, its role and responsibilities, and the activities that we've conducted so far in implementing the goals here in Iceland. And then I wanted to talk a little bit about our toolboxes, which we published earlier this year, one for municipalities and one for businesses, and go into a little more detail about the 5 steps that are presented in our toolboxes. So I'll just start. So the government working group was established in 2017 and then updated in 2019. It has members from all ministries, but also Statistics Iceland, the Icelandic Association for Local Authorities, the Parliament, and then we have 2 observers, one from the UN Association in Iceland, and then one from the Youth Council for the SDGs here in Iceland. And as I said before, the working group is led by the Prime Minister's Office, but in close cooperation with the Ministry for Foreign Affairs. And the principal task of the working group is to work towards the implementation of the goals here in Iceland, in the sort of government institutions, but also to analyze Iceland's position with respect to the targets. And we also conduct and oversee the voluntary national review of Iceland. Our first status report was published in 2018, which provided an insight into Iceland's status towards the SDGs, both nationally and internationally. So we also report on our development work overseas. And the report maps out the government's main tasks, plans and challenges for each of the goals. But unfortunately, it's only available in Icelandic. Based on this work, the working group also set out 65 priority targets. So although most of the 169 targets under the SDGs apply to Iceland, they do so in varying degrees. So it soon became clear to us that in order to achieve measurable results in the implementation of the goals here in Iceland, we needed to prioritize them. So in choosing the priority targets, the working group asked the Institute for Sustainability Studies in Iceland at the University of Iceland to assess available data and the quality of that data, but also submit a proposal for a methodology on how to prioritize the SDGs in Iceland. So each target was evaluated based on 4 criteria, whether this target was consistent with the government policy, did it have a connection to Iceland, or was it mainly a development target? Did we have data on that target, and how far is Iceland from reaching that target? And after consulting with specialists within each ministry, the 65 priority targets were chosen. So Iceland presented its first VNR in 2019. So As most of you know, a part of the follow-up and review mechanism of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development is this voluntary national reviews to conduct regular and inclusive reviews of progress at the national and subnational level, which is country-led and country-driven. And these national reviews are to be voluntary, state-led, undertaken by both developed and developing countries, and involve multiple stakeholders. So the voluntary national reviews, or the VNRs, aim to facilitate the sharing of experiences, including successes, challenges, and lessons learned. And countries are encouraged to present a VNR at least 3 times over the duration of the goals, and Iceland presented its first in 2019. And we plan to do so again in 2023. So our Prime Minister, Katrín Jakobsdóttir, presented our first VNR at the HLPF in New York in 2019. But included in Iceland's presentation was also a member from a private company, Carbfix, which is a company that has found an innovative climate solution by turning CO2 into stone. So that was sort of sharing of knowledge and experience from Iceland's side at the meeting. And we also invited 2 members of our youth council to address the meeting, to give their sort of point of view in terms of the SDGs. So the Youth Council, a few words about them. They are 12 representatives aged 13 to 18 years old from all over the country. They meet regularly throughout the year and have 1 annual meeting with the government. So this picture on the slide is actually taken when they met the government earlier this fall. And they also presented the government with sort of their action plan, what they thought the government should do to further the SDGs here in Iceland. So the main goal of the Youth Council is to learn about the agenda and to raise awareness on the SDGs and sustainable development, both amongst their peers, but also the society as a whole. And a specialist in even involving children and youth from the Office of the Ombudsman for Children in Iceland supervises the council on behalf of the Prime Minister's office. Earlier this year, we also published an online dashboard. So we assess, so this is a government assessment, and we assess each target under the goals on a 4-point scale. So the red one is Iceland is very far behind in reaching this goal. The yellow one is somewhat behind. The light green one is Iceland is well on its way. And the dark green one is the targets that we think we have achieved those targets. So, as I said, it's a government assessment. It's made by experts within relevant ministries, and the purpose is sort of to provide an overview of what the government is doing towards each of the SDG targets. So it's an online dashboard, so it's a web page, and if you click on a target, you will be transferred to another page, which will then show in more detail what we mean by this assessment. So the first line is just the goal itself, then the status of the target. In this case, we think the target has reached. Then a few lines about what the government has been doing towards this target, and then we have responsible ministry labeled. And if you scroll down, you will see the indicators and Iceland's status towards the indicators for each target. Just a few words on stakeholder engagement. So stakeholder engagement is one of the working group's main objectives, and the key stakeholders we engage with are municipalities, the business sector, NGOs, academia, and youth. So as I said earlier, the Icelandic Association for Local Authorities has a representative in the working group. So she has been a part of the work, that representative has been a part of the work from the very beginning. But then the municipalities have also established their own SDG forum for information sharing and discussions amongst the municipalities. And furthermore, at the beginning of this year, a new cooperation platform between state and local government was established in order to strengthen the cooperation further. And that sort of platform is currently working on making available an SDG data set applicable to municipalities. So the working group has also a cooperation agreement with FESTA, who I know is your partner, the Icelandic Center for Social Responsibility and Sustainability, on promoting the SDGs to businesses in Iceland. And in October, FESTA organized 2 workshops with various stakeholders, not just businesses, on SDG 12 and SDG 13, which are sort of the SDGs that we struggle most with here in the western part of the world. And they used, this picture was actually taken in one of those workshops. So they used a methodology from Brookings Institute called 17 Rooms, which is very interesting methodology. So the idea is to bring together key players surrounding the SDGs and for discussion about actions that can be realized in the next 12 to 18 months. So we're very excited about the outcomes of these workshops. But we have a similar agreement with Almannaheill, which is an umbrella organization for NGOs in Iceland, on promoting the SDGs to NGOs and sort of engage them in the work of implementing the goals. And as I mentioned earlier, we have previously partnered with the University of Iceland, and we continue to look for ways in which we can support each other's work on sustainable development. And also, I would just in this section want to mention the 2 toolboxes we published this year, one for municipalities and one for businesses, but we'll talk more about them in a few minutes. So this is also an important work for the working group. So Sdg Mainstreaming. We've linked the SDGs and sustainable development to numerous of government policies and programs. So for example, the new educational policy, our policy for development cooperation, of course, and the Iceland's climate action plan. But more importantly, we've also integrated the SDGs into the national budgetary process. That is, to the government's fiscal policy goals. This provides an opportunity to map the way in which the implementation of the SDGs is being carried out, and at the same time estimate how much funding is allocated to the SDGs at any given time. And furthermore, it will provide a better opportunity to see how the targets are interconnected here in Iceland. A few words about communications. A big part of our work is to raise awareness about the SDGs. So as you know, the SDGs will not be reached unless everybody, the general public, as well as necessary stakeholders, municipalities and businesses and NGOs, for example, take part in integrating them. So to this end, we have placed special emphasis on communications. When we've tried to reach out to the general public, we've launched campaigns. In 2018, a TV and social media campaign about the SDGs was launched, which was called Good News from the Future. That's the first picture on the slide. So the idea was to show news segments that were supposedly from the year 2030, when the SDGs have been reached. And then in December 2018, a second campaign was launched. That's the second picture on the slide. An Icelandic teenage girl, Sdg Mainstreaming, was sent to Uganda to learn how her daily life compared to the lives of teenagers in a developing country. So, and she used the SDGs as a roadmap. So we made 3 documentary TV shows about her experience, and they were aired on RÚV, Iceland's national broadcasting network, in December 2018. And a third campaign, the third picture on the slide, was launched at the beginning of this year, which was also aimed at kids. Now we partnered up with Krakkarúv, which is the children's department of our national broadcasting network. And they made 17 shows for children, just very short shows about each SDGs, and that aired every Friday night for 17 weeks this spring. And we also make these shows available on our webpage and pointed elementary schools to educational material about each of the goals. So in 2019, we launched an online project-based SDG portal. So that gives individuals, NGOs, businesses, institutions, municipalities, and others the opportunity to introduce themselves projects that they think contribute to Iceland's progress towards the SDGs. So the purpose of the portal is to share information, to get ideas, and on how you can incorporate the SDGs into your activities, and maybe possibly find partners in what you're doing. So we looked at some foreign models, for example, Finland, where close to 1,000 parties have committed themselves to work towards the SDGs by submitting projects and commitments. And submitted projects must meet some conditions. Projects must include new measurable goals that promote sustainable development, and thus the advancement of the SDGs, of course. They must have a timed plan, and it should be specified when the goal is expected to be achieved. So public awareness has been measured 4 times. And as you can see, the awareness and knowledge of the SDGs has been constantly rising over the years. When we first measured in 2017, 46.6% of participants said they either knew or had heard about the SDGs in Iceland, so less than half of the population. But in 2020, this ratio was up to 79.1%. So we're really happy about that. So now I'm going to turn over to the second part of my presentation. So you've had some knowledge about what the working group is doing in implementing the goals here in Iceland. And now I want to talk in more detail about these toolboxes that we published this year. As I said earlier, one is for municipalities and one for the business sector. And it's sort of a step-by-step approach to how they can implement the SDGs within their organization. It's the same 5 steps in each toolbox, and although they are sort of targeted to municipalities and businesses, we have also said that NGOs, public institutions, could also benefit from these toolboxes, because it's mainly the same steps that you need to go through, and you just need to sort of adapt it to your organization. So these 5 steps are Number 1, raising awareness. Number 2, mapping. Number 3, prioritizing and planning. Number 4, implementation. And the 5th step is measurement and dissemination. And I'm gonna go over these steps in more detail. So the first step, raising awareness. So what you need to do when you want to implement the SDGs to your organization, the first step, of course, would be to familiarize yourself with the SDGs and create a common understanding on them among those who will participate in the implementation. And it's also important to understand sustainable development and your responsibility towards it. So for businesses, for example, the SDGs will largely depend on the extent and speed of which companies around the world develop sustainable business models. And likewise, cities and towns play a vital role. The OECD has estimated that 65% of the SDG targets will not be reached without involvement of municipalities. And it's also important to understand the opportunities this work has. Because if I take companies again as an example, the research show that they will find increased interest from investors if they take this sustainability road. Consumers will increasingly prefer your products over others, and talented and well-educated people will want to work for you. And in the long run, you will see profits increase. So, but before you start your work, excited as you may be, you need to get a clear mandate to go down this path. So as a municipality from politicians and as a company from the top management, they would need to discuss and conclude that this is the road that you should take. And finally, as a final step within this first step, it would be a good idea to sort of look at the public awareness around the SDGs within your municipality or within your company. And if that is lacking, you might need to do some sort of public awareness or a campaign of some sort alongside the implementation. The second step is mapping. So you have now decided to go down this road and gain support from the top management. So the first thing you need to do is analyze your current activities based on the SDGs. Maybe you're already doing something that contributes to the advancement of the SDGs. So just not labeling it as such. Or possibly some of your activities might have a negative impact on the SDGs, and you need to look at what you can do about that. And you also need to identify stakeholders that are affected by the organization's activities and how you can cooperate and consult with them to secure an effective implementation. And you don't have to invent the wheel, because a lot of organizations similar to your own will already have begun this work, and you should make connections with them and create opportunities to exchange experiences and knowledge. So the third step is prioritizing and planning. So when you have mapped your activities based on the SDGs, the next step is to decide how you will use the SDGs, working for your continued work with the existing policies, as well as developing new strategies, new tasks and targets for your organizations. And you will need to prioritize, because not all of the SDGs will be relevant for your organization. By prioritizing, you will make it easier for you to focus on the main impact your organization has on the SDGs and give you an opportunity to face the challenges along the way. And when prioritizing, it's important to ensure the participation of stakeholders, again with the stakeholders, to get a diverse perspective and to promote the legitimacy of the next steps, which are implementation and follow-up. And the prioritization, well, was a tough word, will also involve a selection of indicators and initial measurements. So if you want to see how your actions will impact sustainable development, you will need to measure them and choose the right indicators. So, and after consulting with stakeholders, choosing your priority targets and indicators, you should make an action plan. This could be a selection of projects that reflect your priorities, and these projects and targets should be measurable and preferably have deadlines. So the fourth step is implementation. Now you can start to implement your action plan. And this involves working according to the policies and plans you have set in line with the SDGs. And at this stage, you should also consider to educate your staff or your stakeholders on both the SDGs, but also your action plan, because the staff will need to work in line with your policies and action plan, and similar education should be for the stakeholders who, of course, play a significant role in the implementation. And in order to keep everyone on the topic, you should hold regular meetings, at least annually, to review your policies and plans and see if you're going in the right direction. And you would also benefit from keeping the conversation going with similar organizations that are also on this path of implementing the SDGs or on some sort of sustainability path. You may get inspired, or you may even learn from their mistakes. So the fifth and final step is measurement and dissemination. So it's important to perform regular measurement, as mentioned before, of the effectiveness of your programs and projects in order to evaluate and review your plan. And it's also a good idea to publish these results, both to inform your stakeholders and the public, and create sort of encouragement and support for the continued work. And it would be a good idea to make a sort of communication plan on how and when you will publish these results. So this will make your work more transparent and also demonstrate the development of your work. And finally, it's worth exploring the possibility of creating a platform for stakeholders to share their knowledge, experience, and perspectives regularly when it comes to the implementation of the target that your organization has prioritized. So this is likely to result in increased and better collaboration with the continued work of implementing the SDGs, because as you can see on the picture, the work will continue. It's not a line, it's a circle. You need to review regularly and map again and implement and so on. So this is the end of my presentation. Thank you again for inviting me, and just please, if you have any questions or comments. I don't know if we have any in the comment section.
No, we don't, but I hope we will have. So I encourage my colleagues and participants to ask questions. But while people are thinking about their questions, I must say that was really impressive, honestly, because, you know, sometimes we feel in LAPAS like, you know, lonely fighters which fight for SDGs, but somehow we don't feel that anybody else cares. So this all very structured stakeholder involvement and all actions what you have implemented and real results like toolboxes and all these campaigns and TV shows, it's really impressive. So it's very high benchmark for us, but I'm looking forward that after the end of the project, we will be happy to share that we have achieved more, and especially budgeting. Yeah. So I would like to ask also myself some questions. Maybe you don't think still at this very simple level, but in Latvia, the question most probably still is why SDGs? Because there is, of course, talk about sustainability. We also have different plans how we can reform our green economies. But why specifically SDGs you see as important framework and for application at policy and organizational level?
Yeah, I get this question a lot because, I mean, the SDGs were agreed upon by all member states of the United Nations. So this is our common roadmap for a sustainable future. But however, when Icelandic municipalities and businesses started looking at the targets under these sustainable development goals, they couldn't really see how they related to Icelandic reality. So they just, this is not for us. This is a work for the developing countries. But I disagree because this is a common language. This is the roadmap on where we want to be in 2030, but you don't have to be so specific. You don't have to look at indicator 1.1 and measure your work accordingly. A lot of countries, especially Western countries, have created their own indicators under these goals that are more representative of the work that is being carried out in these countries, maybe even more ambitious, because in order to agree upon something, you will have to make compromises. So when all member states of the UN agree upon something, of course, there will be some compromises. So yeah, that's sort of my answer, that call it whatever you like, but knowing that the SDGs and the Agenda 2030 is a common language, and when you say you're working towards those, people will know what you're talking about.
It's very good, actually, point about common language, and actually language is very important thing for Latvians. We love our language. We see it as a real center of our identity. And in a way, yes, we have our own languages, as you say, but we need somehow to communicate amongst ourselves. We need to have something in common, as we are living in this one planet, which we have in common. So this is actually very good idea. Also, how we could communicate here in Latvia. And another question what I had is more practical. Of course, we all know theory of change, that how we should implement it and this process. But from your own experience, as most probably you have seen successes and failures of organizations, how do you think, which is that one main thing? I know that for each organization is different, but how do you feel from your observations? What is the core thing? What makes this application of SDGs successful? And what is one thing you would say where people mostly fail?
Wow, it's a big question. Coming from the government side of things, I'm not maybe the best person to ask about the successes and failures within organizations, municipalities, or businesses. But I think that, like I said earlier, when people get too caught up in the actual wording of the SDGs and see that this doesn't fit your organization, and then you just give up. I think that's sort of what I've been hearing when I'm speaking, that people just, I think that would be a failure, because in order to succeed, you just need to adapt. You need to sort of mirror your organization and what you're already doing to sustainability. And just see where can we do better, where can we have impact. So you don't have to be so caught up in the actual wording of the UN indicators or the UN targets even. Just if you have the right mindset and you want to do better, these sort of handbooks or roadmaps or even the SDGs as a whole will be useful to your work, because it gives you sort of a clear idea or sort of a framework, you know, just to organize your thoughts maybe on where you want to go. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, it answers very well. And actually, this is something that we have experienced, that people are waiting for clear answers and clear, you know, steps, let's say, but we can give only a framework and we say, okay, guys, now it's time for you to think and adapt. So it's actually, it resonates also with our experience. So we have two questions in the chat. So I will read out one in Latvian and also one in English, so you can choose in which order you want to answer. So the first is about that tool about achievement of SDGs, what you showed. Most probably that is the one where you can click on success and indicators. So the question is, was it really hard to make it? Is it very complicated, or maybe you can tell short how you got it, if I may say, because actually we have been thinking about similar tool in Latvia, but always people say it's very expensive, you need to link to databases on whatever. So maybe a little bit about the tool. And then there's a second question about, could you tell some example about self-made criteria implementation indexes, or maybe some link where I can see this example, so people want to see, like, as far as I understand, it's this adaptation thing. Can you share any example where any specific organization has adapted SDGs just to see how they adapt indicators practically to their work?
Okay. If I understand it correctly, the first question was about the dashboard, the online dashboard with the government assessment of the targets. That was not expensive. It was just, it's a tool that it's called Infogram, which I used to make it. I made it myself and just put it up on our webpage. But it was really difficult in making because it required information from all of the ministries and different specialists within these ministries. So it took a lot of work. But this will feed into our next VNR report, and we will update this annually now and make sort of yearly reports on what the government is doing towards the SDGs. I would not recommend that organization and businesses would go in this way, because here we are being very we're being very specific with each target and the wording of these targets, because this is the thing we will report to the UN. So this is just government assessment. Most countries do this within their VNR reports, but we wanted to make it more, available and have it online. And we're hoping that we will get some sort of mirroring of this for our next VNR. So we will also get like civil society assessments alongside this government assessment. So by making it available online really early in the process, that will give the civil society sort of more time to evaluate it and come up with their own assessment. The second question was if I have any examples and could I share it. So there are examples, both Icelandic and some foreign, in the toolboxes. However, the toolboxes are only available in Icelandic as is. We have not discussed translating them, but I have seen some interest in them abroad when I've mentioned them in international cooperation. So I think this is something that our working group will need to discuss, whether we should translate them.
And that's actually a very good answer, because we have been also thinking that maybe we could ask if we could translate and use them and maybe adapt. So maybe we will come up also with this, come back with this question. to you later. So I don't see any specific questions anymore. And I think, yeah, I would say this was really inspirational, and we are having our VNR next year. So we had the first one on 2018, which was also very successful, but we need to move forward. I think we've dropped the process a bit since then. So yeah, mild push towards dashboard would be the first thing that we could do with our government, but let's see. And our government also is very good, would say, stakeholder for us, and we have very good cooperation. So I think we will have good results together. So so thank you for your time and participation, and I'm really looking forward to cooperate in among our working groups and also to talk further about this possible adaptation of toolbox in Latvia. So thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for inviting me, and good luck on the rest of your workshop.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.